Good evening. I'm Frank Hampton, former chairman of the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight for the Candidate Forum. The forum is sponsored by the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters. It features candidates for the Salina City Commission. Printed profiles by the Chamber of all candidates can be found at the Chamber office on the Chamber's website at www.salinakansas.org, the County Clerk's Office, and the Salina Public Library. Candidates also completed questionnaires for the Salina League of Women Voters. Those are available at the League's website, www.lwvsalina.org. A proposed ordinance will be on the ballot for the citizens of the City of Salina regarding limiting the power of the City of Salina governing body to impose restrictions on businesses and citizens related to the state of emergency declared at the county or state level. Taken directly from the language on the ballot, this ordinance prevents the City of Salina governing body from enacting any ordinance in response to a public emergency that imposes restrictions on businesses or citizens, leaving that responsibility to Saline County and subject to the Kansas Emergency Management Act. We wanted to make sure that the citizens of Salina were aware of this ballot question, and the candidates will have the opportunity to answer questions related to it during the forum. Let me introduce the candidates for City Commission. First, we have Doug Alt. Not with us tonight is Elise Carter. Next, we have Chad Farber. Then we go to Michael Hoffak, Jerry Ivy II, Greg Linkowitz, Bill Longbine, and Matthew Smith. Thank you, candidates. And with that, I would like to introduce Amy Adams from the Salina League of Women Voters as Amy reviews the format and the rules for tonight.
The format and the rules for tonight's candidate forum are as follows. Each candidate will have a 1-minute opening remark. Candidates will alternate answering questions. First, they will answer questions from the VPF panel, and then they will answer questions that were submitted in advance from the public. Questions will pertain to all candidates. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer questions. They will then offer a 1-minute closing remark. There is a timekeeper, and they will display a yellow card indicating that 15 seconds is remaining within the minute. We will now begin by having the candidates offer their opening remarks. We'll begin with Doug Alt.
Good evening. Well, I've been in this town for 50 years. I've been fortunate to work for 2 great family-owned local companies, and those local owners promoted giving back to the community while I was an employee at each one of those. During that time, I didn't feel I had time to serve on the city commission because it takes more time than I felt I had while I was working full-time. Now that I retired nearly 2 years ago, I have the time to do that. I enjoy having something to do, and I have plenty of time to give to this cause. I grew up on a farm. The other family company I worked for were my parents, and they taught me hard work and common sense. And that's what I plan to provide if I was elected to this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Chad Farber.
Good evening. Thank you to the Chamber for putting this on, to the League of Women's Voters as well. I think these forums are very needed for our community, and I think this is an excellent opportunity to find out more about the candidates. I personally was brought into this race for City Commission because I wanted to change the direction of the City Commission. There's been a few things that have taken place within the Commission over the last year or two that just honestly I've disagreed with, and I kept waiting for somebody else to stand up and be a voice, and I haven't seen one, so I decided to take this on myself. In that vein, I have chosen to be a voice for the people, a voice of reason and compassion, a voice of common sense that tries to bridge the differences and the division within our community. And I do choose to be a voice for all of Celina and try to reflect the will of every Salinan over preconceived concepts or personal opinions. Thank you again for allowing us to be here tonight.
Next is Michael Hoffak.
Again, thank you for putting this on. I appreciate the opportunity to give our views on different items. I was been here in Celina for 42 years. I'm married to Polly Hoffak, who's a registered nurse at Celina Regional Health Center. We raised 3 children here in the community, 2 who currently live here with their spouses, and have 3 grandchildren that that live here also. I'm currently the owner of Untitled Services. I believe my background of serving on the Celina Area Chamber of Commerce, Celina Airport Authority, Celina Education Foundation, and Celina Regional Health Center Foundation gave me the background I needed to serve as commissioner over the last 4 years. I believe some of the strides we have made over the last 4 years have put Celina in a wonderful and tremendous spot. When I ran the first time, my tagline was, "It's about our future." We've had a wonderful 4 years of serving on the commission. I believe we have a great amount of work still to do.
Thank you. To Jerry Ivy II.
My name is Jerry Ivy, and I'm running for City Commission. I was born and raised 5th generation Salinan. I'm married to Kara, who is also 5th generation Salinan. We have 3 children, all who have lived here all their lives. I previously served 2 terms on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. I've always had a desire to serve on the City Commission. I would have sooner, but I wanted to devote my time to my kids and their activities. Now that they are grown, I feel I have the time to now serve my community. I started my first job at 12 years old, working at Burgess Cycle Shop for my grandpa, John Burgess. We also did locksmith work at the same time. We currently just do the security side, and I still work in the same business I have had for the last 34 years. I think that shows some stability that I could provide for the city of Celina. When my dad was killed in the line of duty in 1975, the city of Celina and Celina Police Department went out of their way to help my family, and even went so far as to name a park after him, so his memory would never be forgotten. This is why I feel it is time to give back to the community.
Thank you. And to Greg Linkowitz.
Thank you again for hosting this forum, and thank you for everybody who's taking the time to view this online and on the television. A little bit about me. I'm a Celina native. I raised 2 children here. I've been a public servant here as a police officer. Now I currently serve as a planning commissioner. I have a local business, and I've been part of that for the last 21 years. And I think this is a great place to be. I think it's a great place to have a business. It's a great place to raise your kids. And I want to keep it that way. I think there's a lot of things going on that were pointed in a very good direction. And I think a lot of these things need to be fostered. I don't really have any particular agenda by running. It was more about just serving the community. It's just been part of who I am and who my family. They've also public servants as teachers, and there's always been a kind of an unspoken. Thank you for your time.
And to Bill Longbine.
I'm Bill Longbine. I'm a 3rd-generation lifelong citizen of Celina. This is home. I've never left. I'm 62 years old. I've been married to my wife, Donna, for 40 years this November. We've raised 2 sons, Jonathan and Caleb. They both attended Celina schools. We have 2 grandsons. I come from a working-class background. My grandpa worked in the flour mills right down the street, while my dad was a Marine turned auto mechanic. I've spent the past 45 years working in local industry. I have a good understanding of what the struggles and sacrifices hard-working people make on a daily basis. As a commissioner, I would like to see Celina grow in population, and as a community, who can work together to solve common problems. Representation for the entire city and addressing the current housing situation is vital for long-term growth and to accommodate the jobs we have. Again, I'm Bill Longbine. I ask for your vote.
Thank you. And to Matthew Smith.
Hello, my name is Matthew Smith, and like so many of the candidates before me, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Celina Area Chamber of Commerce for putting this event on. I'm a lifelong resident of Celina. I have 3 kids. I'm married. I have 3 kids, and for the past 10 years, I've dedicated my life to public service. I worked as a sheriff deputy and currently as a special investigator and a youth coach. I've decided to run for the city commission to seek transparency between local government and the city and the citizens of Celina, to help create more affordable housing for the city of Celina and help bring better paying jobs to the city of Celina that will attract more people. And that is it.
Thank you. And back to Frank.
All right, thank you, Amy. I would like to introduce the media panel. We have with us tonight, we have Leslie Eichelberry from Eagle Media Salina Post, and we have Charles Rankin from the Salina Journal. And I guess since we began with Doug on the questions, the first question will be from Leslie, and we will start with Chad and then work our way down and finish with Doug. Go ahead, Leslie.
Thank you. In your candidate profiles, most of you mentioned housing as a top issue. If you are elected, what would you do first to help alleviate the housing shortage?
That is a big issue for Celina. The current commission has been working on that topic for a while. I would like to move it quicker. I know that there are restraints with government and with incentive programs and different things like that. But we are on the verge of a housing emergency here in Celina. We have new businesses that are wanting to relocate individuals to our town, and there's simply no place for them to take up residence at this time. So it is one of my highest priorities, the housing. Being a licensed realtor here in Celina, I have a little bit of background with that, and I'd love to use that to help our housing situation here in Celina.
Okay, Mike?
Thank you. Housing is a big concern. As you know, we have a significant number of jobs coming to the community. The current commission that I serve on, we have been addressing that. A couple weeks ago, we approved some IRBs in order to put a new apartment complex up out at by Menards. We're in the process of approving a RHID for a new housing district out by Schilling and Ohio. And the reason I mention those two things is we talk about housing, we need to match the housing to the jobs that are coming. By using these two tools, we're able to reduce the rent and we're able to reduce the cost of the housing. We have quite a few housing subdivisions that are opening up. Stone Lake, Magnolia Hills 2 is opening up. Those are larger homes that will appeal to certain demographics. What we're trying to do is bring in some housing that will get that younger workforce.
Jerry Ivy II.
I agree that housing is a very, very needed right now. The lower income, probably the most, and I would preferably work to bring developers in to maybe bring in some lower income housing, middle income housing too, because I think that would move people out of the lower end and open up some of that as well. But it's definitely in need, and I would make that a priority.
Greg Linkowitz.
I can tell you that being in the property management sector, there's definitely a need in the leasing part of the housing, and it's my understanding there's definitely a need in single-family residential homes. Being on the Planning Commission for the last 5 years, I can tell you there are things coming down the line that are going to help improve this problem. Commissioner Hoffak mentioned the apartment complex just north of the Menards and south of Magnolia. There's, obviously that project he mentioned at Schilling and Ohio Street. We also have multiple housing developments that we voted on in the last year and a half. We have a development just north of Magnolia Hills. As mentioned before, the extension to Magnolia Hills. We have a new development that's just being started off of Cedar Ridge. And I think we've got a good start on trying to tackle this problem. We just need to nurture these programs. Thank you.
Bill Longbine.
Yeah, in the short term, I would like to see neighborhoods revitalized and maybe some infill of available lots. We need to find builders who would find it in their timeframe to build smaller affordable homes. We have lots of jobs here available, but we don't have jobs that match the cost of housing in Celina, and affordability is key. And we need to attract investments in apartment buildings, as Commissioner Hoffak said. This was just approved last week, and that are not limited to age and income restrictions. And I'd also like to see some of the obstacles reduced that builders face trying to get things approved. It's a long process, especially when you're putting in streets and utilities, to actually get a development in, and we need something quick. And there is things going on.
Matthew Smith.
What I would like to see as far as housing is the city of Salina. I don't know, I'm not on the commission yet, but I'd like to see the city of Salina help with that. I see newer houses being built, roughly 300,000 or more, but what I'm looking for is something along the 150,000 a working family could afford. And I think the city of Celina possibly has the funds to help with that.
Doug Ault.
Well, I agree that it's one of the more challenging situations we have right now. A couple of comments have already been made, but I'd like to see the process shortened for getting building permits from the time that the application for a development is done. It seems like it takes quite a while. I'm sure, I know Greg's on that panel, but hopefully there would be some way that we could shorten that up to maybe get builders more encouraged to do more building. Also, maybe tweak the special assessment process that we have, make that a little bit more, I think it's maybe a 15 or 20 year situation now, maybe stretch it out a few years. I know it's been successful and they haven't lost any money. Affordability is difficult with inflation, though.
Okay, our next question goes to Charles Rankin from the Salina Journal. Charles?
Thank you. We're all sitting pretty far apart already, and still, because we're still in the midst of COVID. As it's continuing, what do you feel is the role of the City Commission and the governing body as far as helping with keeping the city safe, but also understanding that civil liberties and actions of the citizens are important to many of them?
Thanks, Charles.
Start with Michael Hoffak. Go ahead.
Again, over the last year and a half, this has been a hot topic, and as a commissioner, I got to deal with it as mayor for 2020. The information that we continued to receive was always changing. We had to make decisions on the fly. One of the decisions that came down from the state was the closing of businesses. That was something I did not agree with. Again, it was a mandate we could not control. Right now, there's an ordinance that's going to be voted on that deals with the ability of the City Commission to deal with emergency declared items from the county or the state. I still think it's important that the city has that control, not knowing what could happen. This is all about face masks, but we have no idea what could happen if we had a tornado, a natural gas explosion, a lot of things like that. Thank you.
Jerry Isaacson.
Personally, I would like to see the city open up without any restrictions, with no more mask mandates, especially no vaccine mandates. This doesn't mean that I'm against either one of those things. I just prefer to have the choice. We need people to get back to work so that businesses can fully reopen and get moving again and just, get life back to normal. The City Commission's role in that, I don't know exactly what it would be, but anything that we could do, I'd be behind to help.
Greg Linkowitz.
I'll preface with what I'm going to say with I'm not in the medical profession, will never claim to be. I think a big part of that is listening to a lot of the experts in the area, and like it or not, we're going to have to abide by what comes down from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment and Saline County Health. I'm not a believer in mask mandates or moratoriums or business shutdowns. I would like to avoid those if at all possible. But I also understand there may be some factors that pop up that we are just unaware of right now. It's just like we have the foresight to look at that problem from a year and a half ago, and there's things we know now that we didn't then. Things change quickly, and I think that's something we need to keep in mind. We need to keep our minds open in regard to that, and I think it does come down to consulting with people in the medical profession and the experts. Thank you.
Bill Longbine.
This will continue to evolve, and of course, all agencies will pay attention and deal with it, but in hindsight, we've learned a lot over the past year and a half, and we know what to expect a little more. The whole jurisdiction with the city governing, the city does not have a health department, the county does. And the city does not have an emergency manager, the county does. All citizens of Celina are also citizens of Saline County. And I would insist the city and the county talk to one another and be on the same page. There's no reason we cannot do that. I would let the experts who have the departments and the resources deal with this and follow their guidance.
Matthew Smith.
Well, I want to first start off by saying I don't like wearing a mask as much as the next guy. I believe masks have helped save lives, and being as a public servant, I think masks are a great thing. As far as the city is concerned, I thought they did a wonderful job with the mask mandate. I think as far as business-wise, I think the business owner should have an option to choose whether or not they want people to wear masks on their property or in their stores or whatever, and that gives the citizen, that gives them the choice to decide whether they want to go in that business or not. But as far as the city goes, I think they did a great job.
Doug Ault.
I'm a big believer in respecting individual freedoms. I don't care for mask mandates and other mandates either. Once in a while, I think they probably are required. I'm not going to second guess what the city did last year. I don't think that's fair. It sounds to me like this ordinance, that's going to be thrown then back to the county commissioners. When I first saw this, I know some of the county commissioners don't have any problem with those people at all. But I was a little taken, I kind of took offense to that if I was a city commissioner, thinking that, well, people think that they can make a decision better than we can. And I would like to be part of that process if we ever need that again. This has been kind of a once-in-a-lifetime situation. And again, I think with some medical advice and that type of thing, I would be able to make an informed decision.
Chad Farber.
This is one of those issues that has divided our community, not just the decisions by the city commission, but each individual business, each individual is making their own decision. And as Commissioner Hoffak said, the information is constantly changing. You don't know what to believe, you don't know what to disregard. This is one of those areas where I agree with Mr. Ault. I believe in individual personal liberties. Each individual should be able to make the choice for themselves. Each business should be able to make the choice for themselves. The reason we were so against, and I say we, there was a group of us that spoke up against this, the reason we were so against mask mandates had nothing to do with the mask, it had to do with the mandate part. And as you can see now, the mask mandate has led to vaccine mandates, and we don't want that in our city either. There is an ordinance that is coming up on the ballot. I would encourage you to vote yes. There's a lot of opposition. They've hired a group from Washington, D.C., and they've doxed the individuals that signed the petition. It's disgusting right now.
Leslie Eichelberry, do you have another question for the candidates?
I do. In your profile, several of you mentioned the need for jobs with higher wages and attracting a qualified workforce to Celina. How would you accomplish those?
Okay, and we will start with Jerry Ivy II.
They're attracting industries, maybe giving some incentives to bring some of the bigger factories and stuff in. I believe there are lots of jobs available right now with higher wages. We need to find a way to give people incentive to get off, basically get to work and fill these jobs. I don't know if attracting more is a priority right at the moment, but I believe it could be down the road in the future. But I would say the biggest thing would be just incentives to get them here.
All right, Greg Linkowitz.
I think a major component of that is housing. You're going to need a place to rent. You're going to need a place to move into, whether you buy a home or rent. I have called around a couple different employers, and I can tell you that, in particular, trade skills are in demand. Like welding, for instance, working with machinery, and there's even local, and I won't name the name, but it's a big manufacturing plant here in town. They even offer a program where they're training on the job. They're offering vocational training while you're getting paid, which sounds like a pretty nice program. And to me, it seems like a pretty big incentive to get people moved here, and it's definitely not a minimum wage job. It pays very well. I think there's other companies that are going to follow suit because this program is successful. But it's kind of all null and void if we don't have a place for people to move into. So I think that's the major part of it is housing.
Bill Longvine.
I have quite a bit of experience with this because I was fortunate to work with one of our finer employers here in Celina for many years. And many of our jobs in Celina they do not pay well enough to justify the cost of housing or to justify relocating here. And that needs to be addressed. I believe in the free market, and our employers, if they want to attract skilled workers, they're going to have to pay the price. And there's demand everywhere today, and a skilled workforce. We need to start with education and keep our kids here in Celina. Both my kids moved away. But the wages versus the cost of housing versus the justifying to relocate to Celina is something that really needs to be worked on, and there's no easy answer there. It's a free market.
Matthew Smith.
I'd agree with Mr. Longvine. What I saw growing up is a lot of my friends, they decided they weren't going to stay in Celina because the wages weren't enough for them. Along with that, you also have affordable health care. People are, for example, my wife, the first 5 years of my youngest son, she stayed home because it was more feasible to have her stay home than work just to pay health care for a child. So that is another thing that we also need to look at that'll help bring jobs here is affordable health care for the citizens of Celina.
Doug Ault.
Well, we've talked about mandates, and one thing we can't do is mandate businesses to pay a certain hourly rate. I don't think many employers would go along with that. We do need probably higher paying jobs, but that usually requires some post-secondary education or trade school. And I'd say what the city commission can do along those lines would be to continue to support those, like K-State Celina, the various other secondary and trade schools that we have here to get people educated to qualify for those higher paying jobs. It's not an easy solution, but it is a supply and demand situation. And I think most would benefit by doing some trade school or post-secondary education.
Chad Farber.
Attracting jobs to our area, good jobs to our area is very important, and I agree with some of the comments. It's tied so closely with housing. We need good housing in order for new employees to be able to relocate to our area. Part of the salary deficit that we experience here in Celina, I believe, is tied to some of the tax rates that we put on our businesses. And they're not able to pay out in salaries because they're having to pay on the back end on the tax rates. And if we as a city commission can help out a little bit in those tax rates, perhaps they could pass that along to our citizens. That's what we're looking for, is a better place for our citizens. Affordable child care, that's an excellent point that Mr. Smith brought up down there. I have a young son and his soon-to-be wife, and they have a child, and it is tough to find affordable child care in Celina. So I would be interested in ideas for that as well.
Michael Hoffak.
Thank you. Well, I'm a firm believer that, competition for labor will help raise wages. And I think as a commission and as working with the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Organization here in Celina, we have done that. If you read an article back on September 26th, we have One Vision looking to hire 200 new employees at a wage of $25 an hour. Schwann's is going to add 225 jobs at an average of $31 an hour. And Great Plains Kubota is going to add up to 600 employees by the year 2030. I believe that will help raise everyone's wages because of the competition for those jobs. I do believe that we do need to continue to work with the VOTEC. I know when I was in the chamber, we helped them to get a welding program in place. Obviously, housing, as we talked about, is an important part, and so is childcare. Those are all things that are going to come before the commission in the next 4 years that we're going to have to address.
Okay, I think we have time for one more media question. Charles Rankin, do you have a question for the candidates?
I do, yes. Many of you have mentioned either a history or a background in law enforcement. This past year, the City Commission created a law enforcement citizen review board to kind of proactively address some of the issues that happened last year during some of the civil unrest within the country. What are some things beyond that review board that you believe could be helpful for the citizens to have a more transparent or more oversight over either the law enforcement that's here in town or the way that the law enforcement is run here in town?
Okay, and we will start with Greg Linkowitz.
Well, first of all, as a former law enforcement officer, I'm a huge believer in training and more training, whether it's interpersonal communication, how to deal with, because that job is a job where you deal with people who are not always at their best, they're angry, they're distraught, et cetera. And anytime you can get training on how to deal with people in that situation, it's a good thing. I know there's been some members of various communities want to defund the police. I think that's absolutely the wrong direction to go. If anything, I would say feed more funding, more training, and that's how you're going to get better officers and better interactions with the community and just the regular citizens. I started law enforcement in the mid-90s. There was a big push back then for community policing. I thought it was a good program. I've been out of the loop for the last 20 years, but my inclination is maybe that's something that needs to be looked at again. Thank you.
Bill Longvine.
Law enforcement has got to be about the toughest job in the nation right now, outside of maybe being a high school teacher. They really are struggling to make a good impression, to do their job, and to not offend anybody. I feel our police department does a very good job. We have an accreditation program which they police themselves, and no police officer goes out with the intent of harassing someone or making them pay for something that they didn't do. We need to support our police. I support our law enforcement 100%. And if you look at law enforcement has changed through the years, how many women are involved, and they seem to make very good police officers. They multitask well, they relate to people.
Matthew Smith.
Coming from law enforcement, coming from the sheriff's office, I worked there for approximately 8 years. Training is very important. The training has gotten better, and they are working on community policing. I've recently saw law enforcement actually walking downtown Salina during the middle of the day, which is very good. But we need to get back to knowing your block, knowing your beat, knowing the citizens that you protect. A lot of police officers now are scared. We've created a culture where law enforcement is scared for their life, so everything is a problem to them, or any small thing could set them off. But the majority of law enforcement officers are good. I don't believe in defunding the police. I think Celina does have room to grow. I think Chief Nelson has done some very good things, but he's also done some things that are not so good.
Doug Ault.
Well, I agree that law enforcement is a difficult business to be in now. It's unfortunate. We see this stuff on news every night, it seems like, from across the country. Fortunately, because of our quality of life here, I don't really think that we have anywhere near those type of problems. I think the police force and the management there, the police chief, have done a great job. I'm not a big fan of fixing things that aren't broken, and I don't really see that our police force has any negative issues going on. I think one thing they have is they aren't fully staffed, and from what I've heard, they haven't been for a number of years. And that speaks to what several others have said, that it's a very challenging job, and the officers are probably more scared than they deserve to be. So I commend them, and I'm glad that we have them protecting us.
Chad Farber.
I echo the sentiments of some of the other gentlemen up here. I'm completely against the defund the police movement. We need to make sure they have all of the equipment, all of the necessary tools, so that they can protect us as citizens. One of the big issues right now is morale within the departments. I had a pleasant conversation with a police officer several weeks ago, and his statement was, Celina treats their police officers well. And I like to hear that as a citizen of Celina. I like to see that we respect our police officers, as we should. That being said, there could be better interaction between the public and our law enforcement. Don't allow your only meeting with law enforcement to be when they pull you over for a speeding ticket. Come up and say hi to them, bake some cookies for them, talk to them while they're out on the street. I like the idea of officers walking down the street and walking on their beat. I believe community relations with law enforcement is a key, and it does not need to be fixed if it's not broken. I'm pleased with what we have.
Michael Hoffak.
Thank you. You did mention the Citizens Review Board. That was set up in 2020. I would like to just address that briefly, and the fact that that is a benefit not only to the citizens but also to the police department. Setting that up, we gave that board no subpoena power nor disciplinary power. The one thing I'm really proud of from serving on the commission is we built a new training center out south of town. A lot of people thought it was a shooting range. I said, it doesn't do any good how well you shoot if you shoot the wrong person. It's kind of my joke. It's not really a joke, so that's why we have a 360-degree simulator in there. We have a training room. We want our police department to be as well-trained as any in the country, and I really believe we're there. Mr. Alt mentioned about being staffed. If we're not fully staffed now, we are as close as we have been for years, and I think a lot of that goes down to the fact that the community has invested in the police department, and we believe that they are important, and I am against defunding the police 100%.
Jerry Ivy II.
About this time last year, as Mike said, where the advisory board was born, there was already a system in place. They already had a review board. This is the new review board that was brought on by the Sunflower Coalition coming in and basically demanding that there be accountability with the police department. I believe there already was accountability in place for that. At least they compromised by not allowing any disciplinary action by the review board. My main concern with police department is I want them all to come home safe at night. I want them not defunded. They need to have the gear, the protection, and just come home to their families at night.
All right, thank you. And thank you, media panel. With that, I will turn it back over to Amy Adams for questions from the audience.
These questions from the public were submitted in advance. So we will start with Mr. Longbine, and the first question is, what goals do you have for the city of Celina over the next 2 to 4 years, including the use of federal rescue funds? And that's to you, Mr.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
All right, I'll read it again. What goals do you have for the city of Celina over the next 2 to 4 years, including the use of federal rescue funds?
My goals would be to see Celina grow, to see our population actually show increases. We seem to lose about 0.5% population per year, and no one knows why. We have a lot of jobs here. But I would like to see Celina continue to thrive. We have much good going on in arts and entertainment. Our downtown is very nice. We have a very good school system, and we need to support that school system. And the growth, though, is just, my goal would be to bring in and maintain and keep young families and their children. All our children seem to go away. Using the rescue funds, there's lots of things we could do with that. I would want to be conservative with it. I wouldn't want it to be wasted.
Mr. Smith.
I would like to see Celina grow in jobs and as well as in population. Most importantly, I would like to see something done for the youth of Celina. Right now, what I see, there's not a whole lot for the youth to do that isn't expensive. I have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old and a 10-year-old, and to get them to go out and do stuff with them, it's very expensive. We need to keep the youth here in Celina, give them something to do, something positive, some kind of structure. Right now, only thing there is to do is sports, band, or my daughter twirls. But we need something for like after-school programs. I'd like to see some of the rescue money go to the after-school programs, something for the youth.
All right, Mr. Alt.
Possibly the river project, if that could be completed at an economical way, that would be helpful to kind of complete the downtown revitalization. Again, it needs to be economically feasible. Of course, housing, I don't know that probably, unfortunately, any federal rescue funds probably couldn't be used for that, but if there was some way to be creative and help that, would be of a big benefit. I think we have a great economy here. We don't have a lot of peaks and valleys. Kind of continue that. Again, population growth's been mentioned. It'd be nice to get to that 50,000 population level in a census, but we just kind of always come up a little bit short. Again, schools are great, but basically maintain what we're doing and improve the smaller areas where we can.
Mr. Farber.
As Commissioner Hoffak mentioned earlier, I believe Celina is in a good position right now, fiscally, financially. I guess the biggest issue I would look at is more of a philosophical thing. There's a lot of division in our community. From law enforcement to citizens, like we discussed earlier, from individual citizens against itself, and I would say even from citizens and government body. And so I would hope that over the next several years, one of the goals of all of us as citizens would be to remove some of that division. It's also important to attract developers to our area. I think that will help with some of the population issues that people have been discussing. Not just housing, but also developers that are willing to work with the city and willing to put in the single-family units and multifamily units that we need to continue to moving forward. That's one of my goals, is to help Celina move forward.
All right, Mr. Hoffak.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to go back to the housing issue. As a commission, we have made a conscious effort to use some of the American Recovery Funds for housing. We've set aside $1 million for greenfield development, and we've also set $1 million aside for infill development. We've not decided how that's to be used. Celina has what we call a Community Housing Development Corporation, or a CHODO. I would like to see some of those dollars go to that organization. That organization takes rundown properties in different parts of the community, brings them up where it's quality housing for individuals, and so we're upgrading all those neighborhoods. We also have deferred maintenance of parks and things that we're looking at. For a long time, we've always talked about keeping the taxes low, which is not a bad thing, but if you have assets and you don't take care of them, you build up deferred maintenance. So we're looking at doing some things out at Bill Burke Park.
Mr. Ivy.
Next 2 to 4 years, my goals are to see Celina grow, become a more attractive place to live. I'd like to see more activities for the families and the children. I'm not sure what the options would be with the Federal Reserve funds, but I would take full advantage of using them.
Mr. Linkwitz.
First and foremost, I think we need to continue the work on the housing problem. I think there's obviously a little bit of a disconnect between the public and the commission, and I'm not pointing fingers for any particular reason, but I think it would be nice if we would do something or maybe facilitate more of a dialogue between the public and the city commission, and just make sure all the voices are heard. As far as the emergency funds, I don't know what conditions, as far as if they have a stipulation on how you can spend that money. Ideally, I'd like to see it go to public safety. I mentioned training for police officers, and I think that training facility is a step in a great direction. I think we need to preserve the downtown. It's something to be very proud of, the art, just the revitalization, and we need to keep it family friendly. We need to keep it a place that people feel like they're safe to be in. I think it would be, obviously, it'd be nice to get back to the old standard of maintenance in our parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. When a developer brings a project to the City Commission, how would you evaluate the project? And we'll start with Mr. Smith.
I would evaluate it by the amount of people it's going to bring to Celina, the cost of that project. I'm not very familiar with that side of the City Commission, so that is a very good question. I really don't know.
Right. Mr. Alt?
Thank you. This was one of the things I commented on earlier was we'd like to shorten the process from the time they bring it for approval till the time they get a building permit. But we need to look at those development projects, do the research, make sure it's going to be positive for the community, be cost effective, and just that it would provide the housing that we need. Just mainly do a thorough review of it, give a fair evaluation, and then make a determination if it's feasible and approve it or deny it.
Mr. Farber?
Obviously, affordability, that would help out a lot of citizens right now. Does it meet the needs that we have currently in our community? There is a procedure in place, though, if you've been paying attention over the last year or so, year and a half. I believe it's called the Live Celina plan, and they outline what is necessary, what is needed, and it gives a scoring system as to what is the best way or best use of that development. So I appreciate the fact that that has already been put in place, and a lot of that can be done behind the scenes. But yes, we need more developers to come in, and I believe the City Commission needs to do due diligence, as we have been over the last year or so, to make sure that it is fitting for our community.
Mr. Hoffak?
Thank you. To me, there's two types of developments. There's housing developments and there's business development. On the housing side, we do have a Live Celina plan that we have updated, and the idea behind that is to match housing to the jobs we have coming in. That's why we have apartment complexes being built. We're looking at multifamily duplexes, single, smaller units, 1,000 square foot, even some what they call efficiency apartments. On the business side, we always look at, if someone comes in trying to bring a business, we look at the wages versus the incentives they're asking for. It's typical now when a business comes in, they want an incentive. It's just the way of the world now. So we have to look at how their plan, their wages match up with what we need. And the better the wages, obviously, the more incentive we're willing to give. We also look to see if that company is going to bring any ancillary companies in that would help support and bring other individuals in.
Mr. Ivy?
Typically, I know that the developer goes through the planning commission first, so I would solely listen to what their, not solely, but I would listen to what their advice on the project is. And then I would take that and I would go and I would decide, how that project would fit in Celina, where it's located, things like that. If it makes Celina a better place, then that's what I would base my decisions on.
Mr. Linkowitz?
I can tell you, as a current planning commissioner, what we look at is, first and foremost, does it fit within the confines of the zoning? The long-term city plan, does it coincide with the common sense of the zoning in that particular area? If the answer is yes, then my opinion is, if a person is coming in, whether it's a private investor or a corporation, and they want to invest in our community, I don't want there to be too many roadblocks. It's free market, and if they think there's a need that they can make profit from, then that's up to them. I'm not going to hinder them. If they've done the research and they're willing to put the money down, then I say we let them do it with open arms. Thank you.
Mr. Longbine?
It is kind of an open-ended question, what kind of project are we talking about? A housing project or a business development? And I think we would need to see if there's a need. Okay, we know there's a need for housing. We probably don't need another car wash. And then I would look at the benefit to the city versus, as Commissioner Hoffak said, everyone's going to ask for something. I do know that Kubota buying the Phillips building got a 10-year tax abatement. That's probably going to be a good deal for the city. Just for the fact we're not going to have an empty building sitting there, they're going to create real jobs with benefits. And that is something I would look at, is the jobs, are they going to be good jobs? Are they going to be long-term with benefits? And every project has risk. And, if people are willing to take the risk on Celina, we need to look and give them every opportunity.
All right, next question. Do you support making Broadway Boulevard more attractive in a similar manner to what was done with 9th Street? If so, what would you do? And that goes to Mr. Alt first.
Thank you. Well, I think they've already started on that to a certain extent. They've removed some medians, makes it easier for turns and that sort of thing from businesses. One thing, that Broadway Avenue was meant to be a highway, so it's wider than 9th Street probably is. There's also some utility lines there that would cause some issues, or would cause some issues if you tried to bury them to make it more attractive. There's some businesses along there that deserve to have that looking better. There isn't a lot of growth there right now, so I would think we'd want to be sure that we're spending money wisely if we did try to continue to improve that more than what they've already done.
Mr. Farber?
I am definitely in favor of making Broadway Boulevard more attractive. I think a tremendous step forward has been the removal of those medians that were there, and I appreciate city staff that took the initiative on some of those. It's made it a much more user-friendly place to drive and make turns, that type of thing. There is a new business going into the Kmart building, and I'm hoping that's going to be a stimulus to that area and driver of business to relocate and to build up that area. And I'm looking forward. We've been talking about over the next 2 to 4 years. I'm assuming the time frame for that was because that's the terms that we're talking about here for commissioners. I'm looking forward to Broadway increasing in not only feasibility for citizens and for consumers, but also in beauty as well. So I think that would be a wonderful idea.
Mr. Hoffak?
Thank you. City staff did take the initiative to remove the medians, which has enhanced that street significantly. I made the joke at the commission meeting the other day. It's the first time in 30 years I've now pulled out of Jim's Chicken legally. So we need to continue to look at those. Again, the Kmart building has been sold. Again, that's another dark box that could have been sitting there that would have been a liability to the community. It's going to become an asset. We need to build off of those things. It always takes one thing to get it going. If you remember on South 9th, years ago, when I was on the chamber, we did a TIF to get Kohl's in on South 9th, and that jump-started that. So as a commission, I think we need to look at things like that. If there's some way, besides the Kmart building, we can help incentivize somebody to bring business there, and hopefully it will just continue to grow, kind of like South 9th did.
Mr. Ivy?
I, along with everyone else, agree with the improvements that have already been made. The median's gone, tremendous. Broadway is a street that connects our south end to our north end, and there's plenty of fine businesses on that street that, like was said before me, they deserve to have easier access to their businesses. So I would definitely be for continuing that process of making it better.
Mr. Linkowitz?
As a current member of the Planning Commission, we've talked about this issue. We refer to these as entry corridors to the city, and we're trying to be cognizant of the fact that this is kind of a first impression that people get sometimes when they're coming in for the north or for the west, and we want it to look better and just give people a better impression of our city. Coincidentally, that farm and ranch store that's going where the old Kmart, I voted on that. That was a huge step in the right direction, a nice launching point for Broadway going the right direction. In a perfect world, if we're allowed to use those rescue funds, the federal rescue funds we mentioned before, it would be nice to maybe allocate some of those funds to those corridors. Thank you.
Mr. Longbine.
Yeah, as it's been said, the improvement on Broadway has made a major change. You know, I think the question is kind of, yeah, we already did that, and we're not going to do what is like on South 9th with the flowers and the art and the landscaping. So I think it's been well received by the businesses there and the people. It's so much more accessible. I think the development there with Atwood's Farm and Home is going to spur other development, you know, and I've been around long enough, I remember that was the main highway coming through town, and I always remember it was typically bars and beer joints. But my grandparents did most all their shopping at Gibson's, and I think it would be really good if we could have some kind of small market in that area, and that would kickstart a lot of development, a lot of activity.
Mr. Smith.
I agree with the rest of them that the removal of the medians was a great idea. I look forward, hopefully in the future, they're going to continue to expand that, the removal of the medians, both north and south. I think it was a great idea.
We'll cover one final question from the public, and it is, how do homelessness, addiction, and mental health overlap, and how would you address these issues? And it goes first to Mr. Farber.
Homelessness is and has been a problem here in Celina, and the question itself answers that the addiction, the mental health, they do overlap with the homeless situation. As a pastor, I have compassion for these folks that are out there, and the truth is, some of them have chosen that lifestyle. Some of them, you can give them all the help that you want, but they're still going to continue to be in that addictive situation or homeless situation. As far as the city commission, I know there was a new ordinance that was proposed by Chief Nelson just recently about camping and so forth, and I believe that's going to help clean up some of the areas of our city. That being said, as our city continues to grow, and we've already talked about wanting to increase population, we're going to continue to deal with some of these issues that arise in the middle to higher range population cities. So as far as the commission, we need to support law enforcement. They are the ones that are dealing with this firsthand.
Mr. Hoffak.
Thank you. We have addressed at least some of the homelessness as far as it's not a proposed, it is an ordinance we passed for no camping within the city limits on public property. But there's so much more. It all does tie together. I think our biggest problem we have in society today is we've closed down a lot of our mental hospitals that we used to have that would deal with people like this. Salina is a very giving community. We have reduced health care for certain individuals. We have the Ashby House. We have the mission that addresses the needs of some of these people. They have programs to try to get them back into the workforce. The biggest problem is some of these individuals do not want to play by the rules, and so therefore they're put back out on the street. I think as a community we just have to continue to work on that, support our police that have to deal with us on a daily basis. I wish there was an easy answer, but there's not.
Mr. Ivey.
It's very clear that there is drug and mental health issues in Celina. I see it daily throughout my job. They come into our store. I just see people out and about. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. I don't know, if they're on something or if they truly have mental health issues. But I think as a commission, we would need to support the agencies that help with the addictions and the mental health. And if we could support that and get more help for the people, tackle those two problems, then hopefully that would lead to a decrease in homelessness.
Mr. Linkowitz.
In my previous career in law enforcement and in my current career as a property manager, I've dealt with many people in the homeless population. As Mr. Farber said, there's a lot of overlap in terms of mental health, homelessness, drug addiction, and that's been my experience, whether it was 20 years ago or 20 days ago. It's definitely a commonality. You know, the solution is not as simple as 4 walls and a roof. I mean, there's just a lot of facets to this problem where there are people that have a certain lifestyle choice, and, you know, they go to a homeless shelter. There are rules in the homeless shelter. You can't be disruptive, you can't be intoxicated, you can't be under the influence of drugs. And that's a no-go for a lot of folks, and they get back on the street, and then they become a problem for local law enforcement. I do think it comes back to the training we mentioned with the law enforcement. It also comes back to, we do need programs for mental health situations like that. And also, there are some communities to the west. Thank you.
Mr. Longbine.
Homelessness is a byproduct of drug and alcohol addictions and mental health issues. Our situation here in Celina, it's not like out in California or Washington State, where we have tent cities, but primarily 90% of our homeless population is addictions and mental health. And like was said before, many of those people, they don't want help. They have to come to that point where they ask for help and they receive it in their heart, and they work every day to address those issues. We do have very good resources here in Celina. We have very generous people who fund those resources. And we need to encourage people not to give money to homeless people. Donate to the mission, to the Ashby House, to DVAC.
Mr. Smith.
All right, this is a very touchy subject, and I'm going to try to get out in a minute, but here we go. So mental health, in working in law enforcement and my current job, mental health and drug addiction, like they say, go hand in hand. I believe Celina does not have enough resources to deal with mental health. What I find is that people with mental health issues, if they're not getting what they need from the drugs, the medication, they seem to self-medicate, which in return causes a downward spiral. Celina does not have enough resources to deal with that. As a law enforcement officer, when you arrest someone that has committed a crime with mental illness, the only place you can take them is to jail. You don't have any other option. I believe Celina needs to build some type of facility to assist with that. If you were to arrest someone at 6 o'clock at night, all the mental health facilities are closed. So you take them to jail where it's not beneficial to them.
And Mr. Alt.
Thank you. Well, this is a difficult and sad situation, unfortunately. I feel sorry for those people. I think the thing that the City Commission can do would be to continue to support the agencies that several have already mentioned: Ashby House, Rescue Mission, Salvation Army, DVAC. There are even churches locally that allow homeless people to come in and get showers certain mornings of the week. That's well received. I know the church that we go to does that, and the minister says that it's pretty incredible when they come in how they look, and when they take a shower, when they leave, how they look. So they're able to improve themselves that way. So I think the City Commission can mainly just continue to support those agencies. I don't know what else. People have to be willing to help themselves. I'm sure it's a difficult situation, but the City Commission, I think, can only do so much, but we sure can support those agencies that are doing a great job.
Thank you all. I will now turn it back over to Frank Hampton to moderate closing statements.
All right. Thank you, Amy, and we're closing in on it here. With closing remarks from the candidates, I would like to start off with Michael Hoffak.
Thank you. Serving on the commission as mayor during 2020, we faced a lot of adversity, but Celina right now is in probably the best shape we've been in since I can remember. We have increased our general reserve fund balance from $7 million to over $12.5 million, and that's like our savings account. That gives us a lot of opportunities. We haven't talked about streets. That's usually a concern. As a commission, we now spend, as a city, over $8 million a year on street maintenance. I think our streets are really better than most communities you're going to go to. We've upgraded our downtown. We're second to none in the state of Kansas. We've helped two companies with major expansions over the last year and a half. We've built back a relationship with the county. We've entered into a long-term lease we've been working on for probably 8 years that we got completed. We also have entered into a new 9/11 emergency radio station that protects the community. I ask for your vote come November 2nd. Thank you.
Jerry Ivy, the second.
First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum. Also, thank you to everyone watching at home. You should vote for me because I'm the best candidate for this job. I'm a lifelong citizen of Celina, and I have a passion to make this town great. My goal is to bring more housing, fill jobs, and bring in more industry. I want to make Celina a more attractive place to live. You can find me on Facebook at Jerry Ivy for City Commission, and it's my page for that. You can leave me any messages. You have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Greg Linkowitz.
First and foremost, I'm a Celina guy. I was born here. I just went to the schools here, and I raised my kids here. I'm a believer in the city. It's not perfect, but I think it's a great place to be, and I think it's going to get better. Despite the pandemic speed bump that we hit in the last year and a half, I think the city's headed in a good direction, and we need to keep it pointed in that direction. I think that a part of that is going to be that we make decisions based on not so much partisan politics, but more, most of this is logistical. You know, do we have trash service? Do we have running water, infrastructure? Obviously, partisan politics bleeds in a little bit, but I'll do my best to keep it middle of the road and all about the mechanics and the nuts and bolts. I want everybody to feel like they have a voice. I want people to feel like if we're making a decision in the city commission that it's based on what's best for the entire city, meaning everybody in it. And thank you. I'd appreciate your vote.
Bill Longvine.
Thank you to the Chamber and the League for hosting and for PBS for the coverage. You all have a decision to make as to who you would like to represent you as part of the Celina City Commission. I am Bill Longvine, a common guy. My values are straightforward and grounded in faith. I bring a common sense approach and respect for all our citizens' voices, and respect for our hard-earned tax dollars and how they are spent. As a commissioner, I would work to bring representation to the entire city. Now is the time to grow what we have in place. I would make every effort to be transparent in decisions and actions, and I would welcome more involvement and input from the citizens of Celina. It would be an honor to represent you as one of your city commissioners. Again, I am Bill Longvine, and I ask for your vote on November 2nd.
Matthew Smith.
Like the other candidates, I'm a lifelong resident of Salina, Kansas. I chose to stay here and raise my kids here, and my beautiful wife, I met her, she's also a lifelong resident. What I'm hoping to do is restore Celina, restore Celina back to what it used to be. For example, me and my kids, we all go out of town, and most families do, to go shopping for school clothes and to do family activities. I want to bring that back to Celina, where you don't have to leave Celina to go get shoes or to go get clothes. I also want to make the city commission more transparent with the decisions and the policy making. Bring better jobs to Celina, bring more jobs to Celina, and I want to help by getting the citizens of Celina involved in doing this. Thank you. Vote for Matt Smith, please.
Doug Ault.
Well, my wife, Sarah, and I have been in Celina our entire married life, which will be 50 years in January. That's a scary thought. But 30 years ago, we raised 2 sons here. We loved the school system, and 30 years ago, we had a chance to move to Wichita in a different job. But we chose to stay here, mainly because of the quality of life. Serving on this commission is not an easy job, but I feel like I'm qualified with my 48 years of business and management jobs that I've had with 2 great companies. I enjoy being challenged. I consider myself a good problem solver, and I like to get things done in a timely manner. I'm big on common sense. And my website that I have for my campaign is alt4salina.com. And like everybody has said, I would appreciate your vote on November 2nd. And thanks to the entities for hosting this tonight.
Chad Farber.
My favorite verse in the Bible is Philippians 4:13. It says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. I used that verse here tonight because this was kind of difficult for me. I'm a people person, and I'm staring at a bunch of cameras tonight instead of faces, and that's a little bit different. I understand it's the time in which we are in. I again, have chosen to be a voice for the people, and I love that interaction with the citizenry, with the public, and I have been asked a couple of times, you're vying for the city commission and you still support this petition that is going around that's limiting the power of the city commission. That's how much I believe in individual freedom and individual liberty. I would rather the people have a choice than for me to sit up here and have power over the people. I would encourage you to do your research, not just on the petition, but on all of the candidates that are here. You have several great choices for commissioner, and I believe many of us would do a great job for you. I want to do something different. I want to move us forward. I want to be a voice for the people. If you would, I would appreciate your vote on November 2nd for Chad Farber.
All right. Amy Adams, you want to send us out here?
All right. I would like to thank my co-moderator, Frank Hampton, and the Celina Chamber of Commerce for partnering with the Celina League of Women Voters on this candidate forum. Thank you to all the candidates for attending this evening. Thank you to the public who have submitted questions for us tonight and our panel of media experts. And thank you all for viewing and putting importance on this City Commission race. And finally, don't forget to vote on Tuesday, November 2nd. Good night.